This is what happened to every lost Toy Story character, Part 2. Starting off with Robot, the red and blue educational toy that bleeped around like some early version of WALL-E. Robot wasn't just some random background toy. He actually had pretty great little moments across the first two Toy Story movies. We first met him in Toy Story during one of Woody's classic staff meetings. He's lifting blocks and setting up the stage, proving right away that he's the kind of toy you need. Later in the Strange Things montage, Robot literally turns himself into a treadmill so Buzz can train like some Usain Bolt in space.
My friends are gone. I'm doing the best I can to carry on.
Honestly, that alone should have earned him a spin-off short. In Toy Story 2, Robot gets some more screen time, helping Wheezy during the yard sale scene and even during Woody's kidnapping. Robot is like one of those dependable, always present toys like Rocky and Snake. Never in the spotlight, but always in the room. Right there, if you need them. By the way, fun fact guys, Robot was actually voiced by Jeff Pigeon, the same guy who voiced the little green aliens. So yeah, Andy basically had two Pixar legends hiding in the background all along. But after that, well, things went downhill fast. By Toy Story 3, the only time we see him is in Andy's old home videos. Since Woody said most of Andy's old toys were either donated or sold in a yard sale, there's a big chance Robot was one of them. Plus, Robot probably works on batteries, and if no one replaces those, Robot is slowly dying of power. That breaks my heart, to be honest. And just like that, one of Andy's most practical sidekicks was gone forever. Next up, we have Mr. Mike, the karaoke king of Andy's room. Well, after Wheezy, of course. If you grew up in the 90s, you probably remember this guy. A Playskool tape recorder with a little microphone attached. Early on, Woody uses him to amplify his voice during the staff meeting, basically turning Mr. Mike into the world's first toy podcast setup.
Thanks, Mike. Okay. Whoa, step back. Hello? Check. That better?
But his big moment is later on, when Woody tries to trick the gang into thinking he's still friends with Buzz. He sticks Buzz's injured arm onto Mr. Mike's microphone and moves it around like some kind of horrific puppet show. Unfortunately, that was about as good as it got for our small cassette playing friend. He pops up briefly in background shots, but by Toy Story 2, he's almost as good as gone. And by the time Toy Story 3 rolls around, Mr. Mike is completely lost. So where did Mr. Mike go? Well, this disappearance actually makes sense. By 2010, cassette recorders were practically ancient history. Andy was growing up, and let's be real, if you showed a kid a tape recorder today, they'd probably think it was some portable air fryer. Mr. Mike wasn't relevant enough anymore, and he became like a lot of toys. Too old. Poor Mr. Mike just didn't have the staying power of Woody or Buzz. Next up, we have the Rock'em Sock'em Robots from Al's Toy Barn. These two fighting robot toys are one of those blink and you miss it background toys in Toy Story. And if you weren't paying close attention, you might not have even realized they were in it. They don't really talk much, and they don't move around much. Well, except for this one scene.
Seen a cowboy doll with a bad arm?
Why, no, I haven't.
Hey, he was talking to me! No, he was talking to me! Why, you...
But their presence actually makes perfect sense. Toy Story came out in 1995, and Rock'em Sock'em Robots were already a staple of toy boxes. They are actually based on the real-life Marx Company toy. And if you look really, really closely the next time, one of the robots is actually missing part of his ear. Random detail, right? Well, actually, not at all. It's Pixar's way of sneaking in the notorious Mike Tyson versus Evander Holyfield match, where Tyson literally bit off a chunk of Holyfield's ear. It's those tiny details most kids wouldn't notice, but maybe as adults watching years later. I mean, details on point, Pixar. Despite that, Pixar never really did anything with them. After that first movie, they disappeared completely from the franchise. No cameo in Toy Story 2, certainly not in Toy Story 3. It's like they vanished off the face of the earth. But did they? Well, not exactly. While the two did disappear from the toy barn, you can spot them years later in The Incredibles. Yeah, that's right, The Incredibles. Both robots are sitting on Bob Parr's desk, tucked among his little collection of superhero memories. So, while they might have been retired from the Toy Story crew, Pixar gave them a clever Easter egg that kept them alive in the Pixar universe. They may not have survived Toy Story, but they definitely weren't lost. Both robots got promoted from kids' toys to superhero collectibles. Okay, now who remembers the Trokas? They were Andy's Russian nesting dolls who most of you probably forgot that they even existed. They're those egg-shaped toys that stack inside each other, like a Matryoshka doll, you know?
Come on, smaller toys up front. Hey, Woody, come on.
In one, the Troikas don't speak a single line. They don't run missions like the army soldiers, and they don't sing like Wheezy. They are actually just there. So now you'd think that by Toy Story 2, they're already lost. But nope. They're actually still around, hanging out on the shelves during group scenes, but again, they're silent spectators. But after that, they completely vanish. No home video cameos, no Easter eggs, nothing in Toy Story 3. Knowing Andy's creativity and skits, it's likely that he played with each Troika individually because it wouldn't have made sense to play with them when they're all nested together. The most logical reason for a lot of people would be that the Troikas were eventually thrown away because the individual parts were scattered around the house. However, if you would lose one green soldier, you wouldn't throw the whole army out, right? Okay. Now you might think, well, if Andy loses a Troika, he can't nest them again. That's true, but Andy never used them like that anyway. We actually only see them nest when Andy's returning to the room. So, my take? The Troikas were eventually sold at a yard sale, since you always see missing parts and trinket items sold there. Now we have a toy most of you probably did spot once, but then also immediately forgot he existed. It's Rubber Duck. Unlike Buzz, Woody, or even Robot, Rubber Duck doesn't really do much. He's just there, floating around, usually blending in with the baby toys.
Everybody hear me? Up on the shelf, can you hear me? Great!
In the first Toy Story, he appears during Woody's staff meetings, and that's kind of it. He doesn't talk, and he doesn't even quack, by the way. By Toy Story 2, the duck is still in some shots, but he's never the center. And after that, total silence. By the time we get to Toy Story 3, he's completely lost. So, where did Rubber Duck go? Well, he's most likely one of Molly's toys since he's always hanging out with Dolly and Fur Bear. The reason he shows up on Andy's desk is pretty simple. That's just where Molly's baby toys were kept. Which means, when Molly got older, Rubber Duck probably went right into the donation box, along with the rest of her toddler toys. And honestly, that makes sense, right? Rubber Duck was always more of a toddler toy, and once Molly outgrew that phase, he had no place in Andy's room anymore. Still, I've got to admit, there's something funny about the idea of a duck surviving the chaos of Sid's backyard and Zurg's battles. Next up, we have Utility Belt Buzz. Yeah, the one and only. The Ultra Super Deluxe Buzz Lightyear that shows up in Toy Story 2, because, of course, Pixar snuck in a Buzz knockoff just to throw poor Andy's real Buzz off his game. Literally.
Buzz Lightyear to Star Command. I've got an AWOL Space Ranger.
Tell me I wasn't this deluded.
No backtalk. I have a laser, and I will use it.
This guy first appears at Al's toy barn in the Buzz aisle, labeled New Utility Belt. He's the Buzz Deluxe Edition, complete with a fancy blue utility belt packed with gadgets. Basically like Batman's utility belt, Buzzified. And just like the real deal, he believes he's an actual space ranger, but then even way more delusional. I didn't even know that was possible, to be honest. But what happened to him after Toy Story 2? That's where things get off. He doesn't show up in Toy Story 3, but in the end credits, we see that Zurg was donated to Sunnyside Daycare.
New toys!
There's no word about utility belt Buzz, so that's kind of weird. My opinion? Since both of Zurg's horns were still straight up and he didn't have the cannon at his hand, it must be another Zurg. I mean, I doubt he'd abandon his son and leave him all alone, so that must be a different Zurg, right? I'd like to think that they just lived a long, happy toy life as father and son, and that they got tacos. Next up, we have the troll. And no, guys, not the kind you find in YouTube comments. The actual troll doll that was everywhere in the 90s. Andy's version has neon pink hair and a little blue Daisy's bikini, making her one of the flashiest background toys in the entire room. In the first Toy Story, Troll pops up in some fun group moments. You can spot her during the staff meeting, in the Strange Things montage getting her hair combed, and even working out alongside Buzz.
I have friends, I lost some friends.
She is best friends with Bo Peep and Rocky Gibraltar. In Toy Story 2, she's still hanging around Andy's room, helping search for Woody's hat. And by 3, the only time we see her is in Andy's home video flashbacks. After that, she's gone for good. Smaller troll dolls are seen at Sunnyside Daycare, but Andy's one? Well, most likely she got donated or sold off like many of the other background toys. It's kind of surprising, honestly. Trolls had a huge cultural comeback, even with their own DreamWorks movie years later, but Pixar never leaned into her. Now, onto one of Andy's most iconic side squads, the Bucket O Soldiers. Led by the no-nonsense Sarge, these 200 little green plastic men are basically the Navy SEALs of Andy's room.
Go on without me. Just go.
A good soldier never leaves a man behind.
Sure, they're only 2 inches tall and permanently stuck in awkward poses, but in Toy Story, they proved they were some of the most valuable toys in the whole gang. Their big moment comes right at the beginning of the first movie, during Andy's birthday party. They parachute downstairs, hide in a houseplant, and use a baby monitor to report back intel. It's one of the best intros, perfectly blending some kid logic with military precision. Man, I love that beginning. The soldiers pop up again in Toy Story 2, joining the search when Woody goes missing. And while they never get the same spotlight as Buzz or Jessie, they were always there, ready to jump into action whenever Andy needed them. But by 3, their story takes a surprising turn. In the home movies Andy's mom records, you see how much Andy once loved playing with them. But now, only 3 are left: Sarge and 2 others. Suddenly, reality hits. Andy has grown up, and the soldiers know what comes next. So in true soldier fashion, they decide to bail before that happens. They grab their parachutes and leap out the window.
It has been an honor serving with you. Good luck, folks. You're gonna need it.
I felt so sad that they left, but on the other hand, Pixar actually gives them real closure. Sarge and his 2 troopers land at Sunnyside Daycare, where Barbie and Ken welcome them to the party. The soldiers don't just survive, they thrive, lowering disco balls and joining in on the celebrations. Out of all the forgotten toys, the Army men might have had the most honorable exit. They didn't get trashed, they didn't get lost. They made their own choice, and in the end, found a new mission. I'm curious if anyone still remembers the Toddle Tots fire truck, maybe better known as the Tikes. These little figures are based on real Fisher-Price Little People toys that were everywhere in the late 80s and early 90s. They don't get a ton of screen time, but their design alone makes them instantly recognizable to anyone who grew up in that era. The Tikes show up in the first Toy Story during group scenes, usually rolling around in their fire truck.
Hey, Woody, come on.
They don't talk, but they add a nice touch of realism for me somehow. Andy's collection wasn't just action figures and dolls. He also had those random toddler toys that almost every kid's room had. By 2, the Tikes are still seen in background shots, but just like the Trokas, they never get their moment. And after that, they disappear completely. No cameos in Andy's home movies, no Easter eggs in Bonnie's room. They're just gone. However, their disappearance makes sense though. Much like Rubber Duck, the Tikes were toddler toys. Once Andy grew up, they didn't really belong in his room anymore. They probably ended up in a yard sale box or a donation bag without anyone ever noticing. Hopefully another kid gave them a new life. Now, someone we all know, and by must, I mean really must. I'm talking about RC, guys, Andy's trusty remote-controlled buggy. You know, the one with big blue eyes painted on the front. Unlike a lot of the toys we've talked about so far, RC wasn't just a background character. He actually had a starring role in the first Toy Story. In fact, he's actually the key to one of the movie's most thrilling scenes. RC is used to chase down Andy's moving truck. Remember? Woody mans the remote, Buzz rides on the car, and together they rocket their way back to the group. It's one of those perfect Pixar moments, and RC is right at the center of it.
Well, thanks for the ride. Look out! Now let's catch up to that truck.
But after that high point, RC slowly disappears from the franchise. In Toy Story 2, he only gets a quick cameo during the yard sale panic. And after that, we never got a glimpse of RC again. Man, that was pretty sad not seeing RC return. Out of all of Andy's toys, RC was one of the most useful. He was a literal getaway car. My take on RC? He probably ended up in a yard sale, or worst case scenario, the remote control stopped working and the poor man was tossed away. That's what happened with my RC Hot Wheels car carrier that I had in the 90s. You don't want to know how sad I was? I am, till this day. And that's what happened to every lost Toy Story character, Part 2. They might not have gotten the spotlight like Woody or Buzz, but each of them added a little spark to it. And in Toy Story, every toy matters, no matter how small their role.